Okay, we'll call our September 19th Jackson County Commission meeting to order. Have our roll call.
District 1, Mr. Guthrie.
Present.
District 2, Mr. Venable.
Present.
District 3, Mr. Miller.
Present.
District 4, Mr. Leadwell.
Present.
Chairman also present.
Okay, we have a quorum present. Have our invocation by Mr. Leadwell and our pledge by Mr. Miller.
Let's pray. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for another day that you've given us. Father, help us be mindful for the things that are needed in this county and the people that we serve. Guide us and direct us in everything we do. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item is approval of the agenda. We have 5 items on the agenda. Is there any changes before we proceed? Okay, no changes. We'll approve the agenda as presented. Do we have a motion?
Second motion.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay. We have no one signed up to speak today, so move on to our discussion items. The first item is regarding incinerator proposal. It's been discussed a little bit from time to time. Did you want to kind of share or talk about this, or how we wanted to look at this?
Yeah, we've got some research behind this. Of course, we don't have it together yet to give everybody. But what we've been talking about for quite a while is the revenue stream of the county. County Commission's got to look for ways to try to increase revenue on our own. Garbage is one thing that we've got quite a bit of expenses going out as far as dumping and landfill expenses. And we were talking about possibly maybe putting an incinerator in to try to increase revenue for the county in the future. Garbage incinerator does 2 or 3 things. The one that we're talking about is actually a power producing incinerator. We can burn the garbage, we'll burn our own garbage, we'll take garbage from other people. Landfill issues are happening everywhere. Everybody's having the same problems, opening new sales, finding the property, blah, blah, blah. And I think this is something that would be very positive for Jackson County in the future. It'll be a revenue stream that'll be steady. I don't have anything as far as numbers, what it's going to cost to actually get into this yet. We've talked about some numbers. I talked to the ones over in Huntsville that built the one on Wall Triana. I actually worked on that incinerator, and I just believe for the future of our county to increase revenue, we're going to have to look at ideas like this in a lot of areas.
Also, going forward, we could not only our own garbage, but we could, other municipalities, other counties, other states, we could actually, I could say would be a real good revenue source for the county.
That's correct. And the big thing with a power producing incinerator, once the garbage is burnt, the power that's generated could be sold back to the power company. So that's a revenue source. The ash that remains, it's got a couple of products that has to be included into the ash, but then it becomes land applicable for farms and hay, and so there's really not a whole lot of waste left in one of these things, and everything has a value. It's got a revenue stream, and I would just like to see the county start looking in this area, not just for this, but other things also, and try to figure out a way to start producing some revenue for ourselves. We proposed the tax. We've still got a revenue problem in Jackson County. The people said they did not want a tax, so we're going to have to come up with some ways to try to increase revenue on our own.
Right. The park project's one thing, one small thing, but that's a very small thing compared to a very big problem. So this is a very big thing that could do something. I think you had mentioned to me about a committee on this, is that right?
That is correct.
Do we want to put this on the sanitation committee? With how that process works, this committee will be open so any of us and all of us can attend. So we can place that on the sanitation committee, or we can place it on a separate committee. Do we have any ideas on how we want to do that?
The sanitation committee is fine with me, as long as Mr. Venable's okay with that, and that's the committee that we're on. One thing that I'd like to, once we get a little further into this, is figure out a way for the delegation to set this up as a different authority where it don't come under an enterprise fund for the revenue that's generated off this. I don't want it tied to solid waste. I want it to be open to where it goes to the general fund of the county rather than stays in solid waste enterprise fund. So there's a lot of things we've got to do prior to coming back, but that's one thing that's very important. Make sure it doesn't fall under the solid waste authority.
The one that you spoke of, is it run by municipality or a county?
It's run by the city of Huntsville.
You got any estimate on the cost, initial cost?
I don't on paper yet, but I can tell you we're in the $20 million, $25 million range. But I don't know yet.
What about emissions?
There's a whole lot of details I think they'll have to go through.
A whole lot of details.
You just kind of brought this up to get something started on it, right?
That's correct.
I think as the committee goes, but we're at the very beginning of this, and I think there's a whole lot of discussion that needs to be had on it. A lot of detail needs to be gone through in the first, meeting with ADEMs and things like that that's going to happen down the road. If we find this is what needs to be pursued, and the first thing is to find out some of the things like cost and all that. So I would recommend we move forward on the committee side and go that route if everybody's.
I'm fine with moving forward. Looking at that committee.
Okay, and sanitation committee, is that
Yes.
support? Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on that? All right, we'll assign that to the sanitation committee, and I guess as soon as we have some, I know that you've requested some information, as soon as we get that together, then just let us know, we'll get a meeting set up and start the process.
The information has already been collected. I just hadn't picked it up. They called me a week ago, and I apologize, but I don't have it together to give everybody, but I will bring it.
Okay. It'll be a long process proposal, so.
That's
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to the next item regarding metal detectors and x-ray machines. We continue to fund the courthouse security, and we've got it in the budget for this next year. If we continue to have this, provide this, which I think to some extent, there's a need for that, we do need to look at the purchase of at least some new x-ray machines. You have a quote here that includes x-ray machines and metal detectors for the doors. Replacement of those, the ones we have are very worn out. Just have some concerns there. So if we were to do this, we could move forward with this in this budget year even, out of our capital improvement fund to take care of this. Do we have any questions or comments?
Is this an old quote? It's dated 3/15.
Yeah, oh, okay. I think he checked, and the prices as of 3 or 4 months ago were the same. So we will get an updated quote on it. But I did request
funded out of what?
116. Yeah, capital improvement fund. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, so if there's no objection, we'll place that on the agenda next week. Next item is a transfer of a council on aging employee to the Parks Department. We have a request from the park manager, a position that became vacated there due to termination, and there's an employee at COA that'd like to make that transfer. If we do this, I think we've got October 3rd for that. We'll work with the council on aging as far as when that transfer takes place, because we will have to advertise and open that position in the council on aging department. Any questions or comments on that? Carl or Lynn, do you have anything? We no other questions or comments, and if there's no objection, we'll have that on the agenda for next week as well. Okay. Next item's board appointments. You have a packet of information there. You know, the folks that have applied for the several board vacancies that we have, and kind of a summary sheet there of the positions that are there. If we're prepared, we've been going on this for some time with the other items we've had going on, but we do have, again, some applications here. So if we're prepared to move forward, we can do this next Monday evening, Monday afternoon. Any questions or comments on this?
I think we need to move forward and fill what we can.
Yeah, there's still a couple things that we have some positions, I think, that no one's applied for, but for most of these listed here, someone has applied for them. All right. Again, if no opposition, we'll place that on the agenda for next Monday night to move forward with. Final thing is the personnel policy/hiring policy. With issues such as, or instances such as what we've had presented tonight about the transfer from one department to the other. Also, whenever we have resignation, which we've had several of lately, I'd like to ask for the commission to consider a change in the personnel policy which would allow us to handle the process, the hiring process administratively, with the exception of the final approval still has to be made by the commission, and for any terminations, the final approval has to be given by the commission. For these vacancies that are given through resignations, we approve those, and that causes us to have to wait until that resignation is approved before we can then advertise, and once that, and we have to vote to advertise, and once we advertise, then we've got the 2 weeks. So it would make the process a lot smoother and help us out if we could actually, once we receive that resignation, you know, within a certain time frame, making sure that the department head does not reverse that, or the person does not come back and the department head reverses that. I think we have a 3-day period or something like that, they can reverse that. That we can go forward with the process of advertising for a position. With the organization charts that will be approved hopefully next week, every available position will be listed there. So if it's not an available position, we can't hire for it. So it's only for those positions that someone's in that you know, again, if they resign or leave, then we can go ahead and start that hiring process for that position, and the commission will have the final approval again for those folks. So are there questions, comments about that? What do we think, if that's something we can move towards?
I think it's a good idea, you know, like we stick with our organizational charts. We do have some departments that have some vacancies that we're not filling in the organizational chart. They have to come, I want to make sure that they have to come back and get approval to fill those positions.
My recommendation to do that would be we just remove that item, that position, vacant position from the org chart until we're prepared to move back and put it back in, if that would be appropriate. But I agree with you. If there's something that's specified not to fill then by the commission, then we would not fill that position. You know, if obviously if we feel like we're having to make more cuts or whatever else at some point, we could always administratively freeze that hiring until the commission has made a decision on whether or not to do that. But given again the number of resignations and just the process in general, waiting for a commission meeting whenever this vacancy comes up, or again when we have a transfer of an employee, it becomes tedious and time consuming, or taking up a lot of time when we could have the process underway already. And right now, Mr. Barnes is, you know, down an employee. We're going to have to shift that employee from the Council on Aging, or from the Council on Aging, which will put them down an employee, and we haven't started that advertising yet. So.
Some instances, due to our process, it's taking 4 to 6 weeks to fill some of these vacancies, and when you're already shorthanded in some of these departments, 4 to 6 weeks is too long to wait to help them there.
That's right. So are there anybody opposed to that? What we'll do is I'll try to, if we can get a policy written up, I'd like to see if we could do something for next week, but amendment to our personnel policy, and the key on that would be that would allow us to go through that process with the commission approval primarily for the final hiring and any terminations, they have to approve any terminations, if you want to maintain that. Is that appropriate, or any changes to that? So if we can work to get something like that prepared. Okay, well, again, I'll try to have something on that next Monday to help speed that up. Work with Mr. Porter to make that happen, and see where we go from there. That concludes the items on our agenda for discussion, so move on to our reports. Mr. Manning?
Nothing today, thank you.
And Mr. Barnes? This one? Sheriff? Nothing? Mr. Venable?
No.
Mr. Gibson?
No, sir.
Mr. Miller?
No, sir.
Mr. Ledwell?
No, sir.
Okay. I think we've got our regular scheduled meeting next week. We'll adjourn for about 5 minutes. We've got a budget meeting following this to discuss some of the items there. And we do have a set employee meeting next Wednesday at 8 a.m., Wednesday the 28th at 8 a.m. That'll be to discuss the budget with all the employees so that they understand what we're, where we're headed and what we're doing. And I think that concludes everything for this meeting, so we will take a recess and reconvene with the budget side of the meeting in about 5 minutes.